You're listening to the Grit to Growth podcast. Real talk with real business owners and professionals who built their freedom the hard way and now want more time, money, and impact.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I'm Levi Teslaw with Mailbox Money, and today I'm joined by Dr. Donald Ellis, a pediatric emergency medicine physician based here in Sioux Falls. Dr. Ellis, or as he likes to be called, Don, works in a space where decisions happen fast, emotions run high, and the stakes are incredibly real. Caring for kids and families during some of their hardest moments is where his work sits at the intersection of medicine, teamwork, and making clear decisions under pressure. Don, thanks for joining us today.
Levi, thank you so much for having me on the podcast today.
Of course, sir. Like I mentioned there, you sent me straight right away, and I appreciate how real you are. Just going by Don, I think you said that you have to tell your nurses all the time. It is not Dr. Ellis, correct?
All the time. Yeah, because and there's a reason for that. It's number one, it's rather pretentious. Number two, if my colleague or my teammate sees a medical problem or sees a deterioration, I want them to have zero barriers to coming to me and saying, "Hey, I'm worried about this. Have we thought about this?" Because that increases patient safety.
Very good. That's the top priority right there. I'm glad you got it right. Well, Don, how about you give the people kind of your background, where you came from, and being where you are today?
Yeah, well, I'm originally from the East Coast. My family has been there for a long, long time. Matter of fact, I'm the first person in our line to move away from this little part of a little county in Delaware, and it was weird because I was introduced to Sioux Falls by my father-in-law. He moved out here in the 90s, and as I was finishing up residency training at the University of Maryland, I interviewed for this job 20 years before I came out here. And they were looking to start a pediatric emergency medicine program at the time. And so I had a very nice conversation with the chair of pediatrics at the time. And it's, gosh, I wish you had done fellowship training, which is subspecialty training in pediatric emergency medicine, because I'd only done general pediatrics. He goes, "Man, you'd be perfect for this job." I said, "Hey, no problem." Thanked him for his time. Didn't really think a whole lot else about it. Went on, I worked for a few years, went back and did fellowship training. I was in North Carolina for a long time, and very thankful for the opportunity to work and practice down there, make a lot of good memories. And then in about, I guess it was 2021, 2022, I was very happy with my job there. But I really didn't feel like I was getting pushed. It wasn't making me learn new skills. It wasn't making me kind of expand on that skill set that a lot of people had invested in training me to do. And so I thought, well, I could work in this job for another 20 years, God willing, have a great career, hang it up and go play pickleball or something like that. Or I could look for something that was really going to push me. And so I found out that Sanford Health was trying to restart their pediatric emergency medicine program. And my wife and I were talking about it. It's like, wow, if your dad still lived here, I'd really think about that. And we said, wait a minute. We like the area, and this is an amazing job. There is literally nothing in North or South Dakota in terms of pediatric emergency medicine. There's not going to be a geographic area that large in our lifetimes that's going to need that to be built. And if we're going to make that move for something like that, we have to do it now, because otherwise this opportunity will literally never come again. And so we were thinking about it. And long story short, a lot of conversations, a couple trips out here. Thought that, if we don't make this move, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. And I had some very wise counsel probably 15 years ago by a mentor of mine who said, never run from a job, run to a job. And at the time, I really didn't understand the value in what he was telling me. Like, I was fairly happy, where I was. And but I'm so thankful that he took the time to share that with me, because that led into us coming here at the end of 2022. And I've been fortunate to be joined by 3 other pediatric emergency medicine docs. So, yeah, wow. That's how we got
here. Did you recruit them, or did that kind of build naturally?
Well, they were in talks to get 2 of those. They were actually finishing their fellowship training at the time, one in South Carolina and one at Cincinnati Children's. And then another one well, she was out working a few years after her training. And it's funny because her fellowship director, like the person who was in charge of her training, was actually my co-fellow in Memphis. And so
Oh,
it was
wow.
a small world. Yeah, it's a fairly small community, and probably, I don't know, a couple thousand of us, something like that. But yeah, it was funny, the connections there. So I'm really happy that they have joined us. There was a lot of work done by the team to build that program, and we're going to be opening up a new pediatric emergency department here early January.
Very exciting. I gotta ask then, so before, or I guess up until January here, where was it that South Dakota and North Dakota were going for pediatric emergencies?
Well, North and South Dakota have been blessed with lots of emergency departments. Some of them are very small critical access hospitals where they have minimal staff, and they don't have a lot of the resources that larger cities like Fargo and Sioux Falls have. But right now, kids that are they're in need of acute medical care, if they don't want to go to an urgent care, or we call them acute cares here in this part of the country, they can go to an emergency department, and they're typically staffed by emergency medicine docs. There are advanced practice providers, whether they're nurse practitioners or physician assistants, who have had a significant amount of medical training, and not just medical training, but training in pediatrics. Except they see the whole spectrum of age, whereas a pediatric emergency medicine provider will see usually between birth and about the 21st birthday. And so
Okay.
right now, the emergency department is located in the emergency department at Sanford USD Medical Center over on 18th Street in Sioux Falls. And there are certain rooms that are reserved for children. Sometimes we'll have to expand a bit, depending on the census at the time. And the new pediatric emergency medicine area is going to be just off of that main ER. So patients and families will still come through the main entrance. They'll be directed to a pediatric triage area, and from there they've got their own kind of separate area of the waiting room, and then they'll eventually go into the exam rooms for kids.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha. So you mentioned it's going to be in January here. Are you able to share where the location will actually be then?
Yeah, I mean it's basically attached to the existing emergency department. One thing you
Okay.
have to know about academic medicine is that real estate is very highly guarded around the country, and if you're in a teaching hospital, people don't typically want to give that up. However, I found that things are very different here in Sioux Falls. Excuse me. When I came here, they said, "Hey, we're having a lot of kids come in the ER. We're seeing patients in the regular ER right now. Would you like to use this clinical space that's literally right off of the main ER?" I'm like, "Absolutely." They said, "Well, yeah, after about 4 p.m., we don't really use it. If you'd like to put kids over there," I'm like, "Yes, 100%." And I just that just boggled my mind. That doesn't happen in academic medicine. And so they did that. They actually had a smaller construction project where they put it like a passageway through there. And then, as that unit was finishing up their time, and that they moved into another renovated space, they were able to get a very generous gift by Dave and Christine Billion to kind of kickstart revamping this space to be used just for kids 24/7. The community was extraordinarily supportive of this, and that's then what culminated in this, in this new PZR. But it's funny, it originally that space for kids was the initial ER decades and decades ago. It just had many iterations through the years.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah.
Don, could you, for listeners who aren't very familiar with kind of the specialties that go into pediatric care, can you go into what that looks like and how it might differ from, let's say, just normal emergency care?
Sure. Yeah. I guess first and foremost, I work with a group of really talented emergency medicine providers, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, docs from all over, and I would let them see either one of my kids. My wife and I have 7 kids. I would let them see either one of my kids any day of the week, and they are fantastic. They're great medical professionals, but they're also good people with whom to work, and so I'm very thankful to work with them. The pediatric emergency team, though, is specialized to work just with kids. All of us have adult training in our either medical medical school, our residency, our fellowship training and all. But really, like, our job is to take care of children. And when that is your focus, the product is going to be different because that's the whole reason why you're there. Sometimes we'll see, folks up until the age of 21, but typically in the pediatric emergency department, it's, those kids that are, birth through about the 18th birthday. And so that product is going to look different. And that is your whole reason for existence. And that's what we're trying to do here. Our primary goal is to have care that you would want for your own kids, so that that if you would do something for your own kids, you're going to do it for these kids. If you would not put them through something, you're not going to put them through it. And it's up to the families to decide what's best for their kids. And sometimes we're going to disagree on that, but you want them to have the options and to have exactly the same information that you would have if you were faced with those circumstances. Because let's face it, nobody wants to be a patient in the emergency department. I worked with another attending physician a few years ago in North Carolina, and he said, we want to be the best part of a patient's worst day. And it may sound hokey. That is absolutely essential. We have to strive for that. Now, we're not set up for problems that have been going on for years and years, or even weeks and weeks. That's not what the emergency department does. We're happy to see folks if they think that they need us, but we can't, give those answers many times that are really needed by patients for those chronic problems. But when there are significant illnesses and significant injuries, and there's a big traffic wreck, and the cars go rolling over, and they have to cut the patients out. Hey, that's it. That is where my team shines, because that is the only reason why they're there in medicine. They don't have offices to see, kind of well child visits or routine physicals. They don't typically work in urgent cares. They are right there for those critical illnesses and critical injuries.
That makes sense. So along those lines of pressure and everything, what makes it the team able to operate and come through in those high pressure situations?
Well, every person, first of all, has a deep commitment to pediatrics, to medical care in general. But the administration at Sanford has done some unique things that are typically not done, especially for a city of our size. I know a lot of people think of Sioux Falls as a big city, but if you look at around the country, I grew up in a really small town. Okay, that's just kind of how it was. Our population would be dwarfed by any of the little towns around here. But Sioux Falls, if you look at versus Milwaukee, LA, Chicago, Atlanta, they're very, very small. And so despite that, the Sanford administration and the University of South Dakota School of Medicine administration, they've put a lot of support into pediatric emergency care. Not only do they have pediatric emergency medicine docs there, not only are they opening up this really gorgeous space as their new pediatric emergency department, but they've also invested in something called Child Life. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they are professionals that are not docs or nurses. Their job is only to decrease the suffering of patients and families during medical visits. And so they'll explain procedures, and they'll have therapeutic play with kids, and they'll show them, hey, this is what an IV looks like. Here's what an MRI looks like. Unfortunately, sometimes they're tasked with helping siblings of patients who have died, and that is a really difficult challenge they face. But they're not there to make money for the hospital. They're only there for the patients. And we have that in Sioux Falls. And if you look at the numbers,
Amazing.
we shouldn't have that. If you also look at a city of 250,000 people, more or less, depending on where you draw the lines, we have nurses that are not only specializing in emergency medicine. The hospital has sent them for rotations and extra training just in pediatrics. And so the whole quality of the product, the experience is going to be different when everyone's focus is, pediatrics, like sort of individually, if you will. And we have other folks as well that come over from the emergency department. We don't have 24/7 pediatric ER docs on because there's only 4 of us in the whole state. And so we would like to keep everybody, working and not burn out. But
Yep.
That's how we are. So we're going to have hours starting out from 8 in the morning until 12 midnight. and then we'll be covered overnight by some of our teammates that also not only have medical training, obviously, they're very skilled at that, but also they have pediatric training as well, but they're not pediatric ER docs.
Okay. Okay. Very good. So, along the lines of not getting burnout, you mentioned you have 7 children at home. How do you kind of avoid carrying some of that work home with you and enjoy those 7 children of yours?
Well, I always tell folks, I was given the world's greatest spouse. So the rest of you are out of luck. I don't care. I'm fine with that. My wife and I have been married for 25 years, and she's a scientist by training, but she's been around long enough to kind of know how kind of medicine works and all. She is a wonderful sounding board. I really feel aligned with her. I do. There's this attitude that after about 10 years, you're not supposed to like your spouse anymore. You tolerate them, you go on trips and all that. That's fine, but you're really not supposed to really enjoy being around. I love being with her. She is such a fantastic partner to me. We're aligned in a lot of our thinking about big ticket issues. We are 100% aligned in our faith. It is a huge source of support for us both, and also little things too. How we spend our time, how we interact with our kids. That really takes a lot of the pressure off. And I just, like I say, I always say that I have the world's only wonderful spouse, and the rest of you guys are out of luck.
Donnie, you know what? I think this episode's going to come out right around Valentine's Day. We'll be sure to make you a nice clip to send to your wife of that right there. But I can tell that was very genuine, and that's amazing.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, Don, what's kind of obviously you guys are just about to open. Is there any kind of other future plans, maybe let's say 5 years down the road that you could share with us?
Yeah. So eventually, we'd like to have 24/7 coverage by board certified pediatric emergency medicine docs. We'd like it to have it eventually where there is more than one doctor on or more than one medical provider on in the emergency department, whether that's a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant who works with us. Um, One of the exciting things is that they're starting an emergency medicine residency. It's the first one in South Dakota. Actually, I think it's first in both Dakotas. And we're going to have emergency medicine residents there in July, and that's going to be great because not only will we be able to have more hands on deck, if you will, but also we're going to be training these doctors to practice kind of how we would want our own kids seen. And I'm hoping that a lot of these emergency medicine docs will choose to stay in South Dakota. As you probably know, this is something that our state needs. And
Yeah.
if we're going to be living and thriving here, and then we've got to do everything we can to make sure that the state itself is thriving. One of those ways, not the only way, is through great emergency medicine care. It doesn't take the place of primary care. It doesn't take the place of other specialists. But this is one thing that has been identified legitimately as a need in our state. And I cannot wait to have those emergency medicine trainees come through. We have pediatrics, we have family medicine, we have surgery, we have transitional program folks right now. But this is going to be a watershed moment for healthcare in the upper Midwest.
Amazing. Before we wrap this up, is there anything you wish people understood about pediatric emergency care better, or something that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, just that it's a partnership. When I go in to see a patient and I'm getting the history, that's like all the details of their past, and I'm double checking things that are found in the electronic medical record, and I'm asking them what's been going on with the illness or with the injury and all, and then I do my exam, and then I'm talking to the patient, I'm talking to their caregivers there. It really is a partnership, and I'm going to say, hey, this is the list of things that we could do. I think very reasonably, and we're not going to be recommending testing just for testing, but we're also not going to be not doing testing if we wouldn't do that on our own kids. But ultimately, it's the parents' decision if they want to go forward with something, as long as it's not immediately life threatening. Things that are going to result in that patient, dying or losing a limb, that is off the table, that is non-negotiable. This is what we need to do right now. But there is a wide range of things that really come down to, hey, what is the best decision for your family at this time? And we need their input for that. And sometimes I'm going to recommend something and they're going to say, no, I really don't want to do that. And sometimes, they may want a test that doesn't hurt, it doesn't cause radiation exposure, that I wouldn't have gotten, that I'm okay doing, because it's going to help them feel better about their care. It's going to help them sleep at night. But it is a partnership first and foremost, and we cannot do that without input from the caregivers. I mean, as I've said many times today, and in the last 25 years, we really want people to feel as if they're being cared for like family. And if you don't have that, it's hard to really feel good at the end of your shift.
Don, I appreciate you sharing all your insights and perspective. It's nice to hear that someone whose heart's really in the right place, especially for, like I said at the beginning, something that could be, as you said, a patient's worst day, try to be the best part of that. I think that is a really great message to hear. And we're happy that you're building it here in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. Hope you have a great day.
Of course. Thank you, everyone, for listening to the show. We'll see you guys on the next one.
Know someone with serious grit and a great growth story? Send them our way at grittogrowthpodcast.com/guest.